Hello everybody and welcome back. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. Today, we're talking about why do VR games suck? Or at least the comments that I frequently receive that have this sentiment. If you think I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes trash talking VR games, well, you're wrong. I'm a huge advocate for VR, and after 30 years of gaming, 90% of my game time is now spent exclusively in VR. So instead, this video is a direct response to, quite frankly, some ignorant comments that I see on a daily basis. I also want to send some support to the amazing VR developers out there, and I'll be going over everything from the negative opinions people have on VR games, the specific challenges that VR developers face, and why we don't see more titles at the caliber of Half-Life Alyx. There are, of course, links and timestamps in the description, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by Kiwi Design, one of my favorite sites for VR accessories. They just released some brand new Quest 2 hand straps that'll give you that Valve Index feel and allow you to completely let go of the controllers. They also have plenty of other accessories like controller weights for those of you who work out in VR, cable management systems, and my favorite accessory, their super durable and extra comfy Quest 2 Elite strap. There are links down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support this channel. Okay, so let's start off with the crap that people say about VR games. Most commonly, I hear that VR titles are too casual, too short, have PlayStation 2 level graphics, or just plain suck. Now, some of these complaints are valid, but there's an overall justification for them all that I will get into later. But there's also plenty of unjustified comments that I also see, like VR developers are just lazy, all VR games are cash grabs, developers do whatever meta tells them to do, developers don't care about making good games, just making money. And finally, someone used to love to comment on all of my videos that the best VR game is only about a 7 compared to the average flat screen title. After 2.5 years with this channel, I've seen a lot of hate directed towards VR games and developers. But in my personal experience, these developers are some of the hardest working, creative, and most ambitious individuals in the industry. Unlike flat screen games, VR titles have an exceptionally high success rate of starting out as early access games and eventually evolving into high quality releases. They don't remain in eternal early access limbo, only to eventually be abandoned like their flat screen counterparts. This is a testament to the commitment and dedication of VR development studios. Even fully released VR games are continuing to receive updates years past launch. With the exception of Valve and their title Half-Life Alyx, indie developers have been wildly more successful and competent than AAA studios. In fact, many of those AAA studios that took a crack at VR have failed miserably. And yes, we will get into that topic later. So what are some of these hurdles that are causing both AAA studios to fail and also limiting the current generation of VR games? Well, there's actually quite a lot of them, and it's a miracle that we even have what we do right now. For starters, most of these successful titles are multi-platform. You might be thinking, so what? Console flat screen games are also multi-platform. Yes, this is true, but with the exception of the Switch, they are using extremely similar hardware. Display and controller layouts require a minimal reconfiguring, and they don't need to factor in things like tracking methods, screen refresh rates, and sometimes completely missing controls like no thumbstick. Sticking with consoles for a second, there's a reason why a lot of the much larger titles come to the Nintendo Switch at a later date. This is because it has lower end hardware and requires a lot more optimization. Now, this is exactly the same for VR, but scaled up. Rather than titles coming to the most powerful hardware first and then being optimized for the lower end hardware, it's the opposite in the VR realm. Regardless of the VR hardware you currently prefer, the Quest is king right now. Now, when VR launched back in 2016, you needed an extremely powerful PC. The Quest 2 is a miraculous achievement that has somehow managed to overcome that while using extremely low-end mobile hardware. So we've now managed to get VR headsets into the hands of millions of players, but it's not nearly as powerful as it was years ago. Now, if you're thinking VR should have just went the make better games route and everything would have worked out, Meta already tried that. They were called Facebook at the time, but they helped to fund a lot of higher-end games, including Stormland, Asgard's Wrath, Robo Recall, and Lone Echo. Valve also took a shot at this with Half-Life Alyx. And to date, these remain some of the best and my favorite VR games. But unfortunately, it really didn't push the needle enough when it comes to VR adoption. So VR was forced to go the mobile route, limiting the overall hardware and scope of games. Now, while this is a major factor, it's only one thing that developers need to deal with. There's also the fact that we are in completely new territory. A lot of old methods for VR game development just do not work in VR. There's basically no official standards, and developers are constantly reinventing the wheel. This includes everything from figuring out the controls to how to implement certain mechanics and physics without absolutely destroying performance. There's also smaller nuances that you don't consider when making a flat screen title, and a perfect example was found during my playtest of Larcenauts. Originally, when you ran in that game, your hands had a mind of their own, which absolutely destroyed VR game immersion. The developers did not want people running and gunning like that, and they didn't know that an elegant solution already existed in other titles like Pavlov and Onward. Basically, when you point your gun down at the ground, you can run, but your speed will slow when you raise your gun back up. There's also additional accessibility options that VR requires, and many developers seem to forget. You need to implement an array of comfort options, everything from vignetting to teleportation. Left-handed controls are a must, and you still need to do extensive testing for motion sickness. So all of these extra items will cut into development time, and time is another huge factor. So not only are developers spending additional time on optimization, comfort options, control options, making sure the application works multi-platform, they also haven't had much time with the Quest 2 to develop a very robust title. Your average high-end flat-screen title usually takes about 3 to 5 years to develop, and the Quest 2 isn't even 2 years old yet. And time also equals money, which comes down to profitability. So at the end of the day, game development is still a business, and you do need to make some money. If you want to develop a truly high-end, cutting-edge VR title, you can only do it for PC VR, and you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. The market's just too small, and unless you have gold on your hands like Half-Life Alyx, you're facing a truly uphill battle. It really comes down to a numbers game, and that's why we saw some truly lackluster early VR games from AAA studios. At some point in development, they ran the numbers and said, we're not going to make any money on this. And that's why titles like Wolfenstein Cyberpilot are 45 minutes long of mediocrity. Bethesda launched Doom VFR in a truly sorry state, and it was a similar situation with the launch of Skyrim and Fallout VR. Now, Meta tried to resolve that issue by funding titles from AAA studios, but this goes back to what I said earlier. This is new territory. They don't know how to develop for VR, and Respawn completely dropped the ball with Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. Stormland was good but overhyped, and the studios that truly shined were the indie ones that popped up around VR. So let's summarize everything and explain why we're not getting these super high-end titles in VR right now. Development in VR is still quite risky because the player base is relatively small. This leads to smaller, lower budget projects. At the same time, if you want to be profitable, you really need to develop on lower end mobile hardware, once again limiting the overall scale of the project. High-end games take years to develop, and the Quest 2 hasn't even been around for 2 years yet. Combine this with the additional time that developers have to work on accessibility options, comfort options, optimization, and basically learn everything as they go, because everything in VR is still quite new, and they also have to deal with all the extra rules, regulations, and configuration changes for each platform. VR development is currently a nightmare scenario, and we have to accept the fact that we are still basically early adopters. Now, that statement right there is extremely frustrating to a VR enthusiast like myself, who's been in this game for 6 years now, and has to deal with the fact that we only got a taste of greatness from some VR games back in like 2018 and 2019, and then we shifted back into rehashing older games with dumbed down graphics and less complexity. There is some silver lining here though. Meta is spending billions of dollars every year to make sure that VR will become mainstream. Sony's also ramping up to make sure they outgame Meta when it comes to VR titles, and by 2023, 2024, the quality of VR games is going to skyrocket. So if you think VR games suck right now, remember that both the hardware and VR game development is currently in its infancy, and everything is only going to get better from here. And if you're looking for a source on this information, it's, trust me bro, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, everybody, that was today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And as always, I'll see you guys on next time.